Channel 8 Debate with me, Francis Finn, the show that gets stuck right into the issues that affect Nottinghamshire now. Four local panellists will share their views, and no doubt I'll get stuck in with a bit of devil's advocacy myself. So tonight we've got Sue Dewey, who is the head of fundraising at the John Van Geest Cancer Centre, and she lives in Arnold. Simon Gray is chief executive of Nottingham Means Business from Bunny. Asif Ali is an imam at the Karimia Institute based in Bobbers Mill. And Ferg Slade is a manager at Nottingham Community Voluntary Service and lives in New Basford. So tonight I'm going to start with something we can all relate to. We've all done it, we've all been made to do it, we've all hated doing it. Homework. Should we ban homework? The reason I'm asking is that Cheltenham Ladies College is having a review of whether the current way of dishing out homework is really doing its job. It says there's a risk that schools fall into the Victorian model of just dishing out homework like medicine. You know, like, do this, it'll be good for you. Take 3 of it a day or whatever. So Sue, I don't know what your regime was like at school, but I certainly would have been happy without homework. What about you?
Well, it would have been great not to have it, but we had lots of it. I went to a grammar school. We had homework every night, and you were in trouble if you didn't do it. But I think, and I don't have children, so I'm not speaking as a parent here, but just as a more mature adult, having homework probably. Thank you. It's started already. Having the opportunity to find out whether kids can work without supervision, I think, is probably part of the key, as well as maybe checking what they've learned during the day.
Yeah, the thing is, though, sometimes, as I said, if it's just treated like medicine, like it's unpleasant, you just need to do it because it's good for you. As if, you know, with 5 to 11-year-olds, which is the age group you teach, can they not just have a childhood? Do they have to always be working?
They do have a childhood, and this homework is a slight reminder and extension of their schoolwork, because really that's school for 6 hours a day, and 18 hours they're not doing that. So they do need to be reminded. Our memory works in such a way that when we spread our learning over the day, we retain more, we understand it better. And so for that reason, it's helpful that the children do homework in the evening on the weekend, not too much, according to their age and their relevance.
What's appropriate for your school pupils?
For year 1 children, key stage 1, it's approximately 15-20 minutes a day. And for key stage 2, it's about 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
So that's not too much.
I can deal with that, I think. You know, but go on, Ferg.
I went to Christ the King up in Arnold, and not only did I have homework every night, but I had a homework diary, so the teachers monitored each other to say that you do get homework and are you doing it. I think with the world as it is now, with the technology as it is, people take their work home. They have to do stuff at home as well as being in the office. People don't work just office hours anymore. So if anything, I think it's good training now that, look, it doesn't just stop at school. You're going to have to do something else as well.
Oh, I don't know. You see, I'm back to having a childhood. Why? I mean, it's painful enough that we are connected to our computers and our emails 24/7. Do we want to encourage children to be doing the same?
It teaches them discipline, and it teaches them to educate themselves. So I went to a boarding school, and we did homework from 7:30 at night till 9 o'clock at night, had a half an hour break.
Were you a boarder?
Yeah, and then 9:30 till 10, and we had to do
homework.
It was called homework. Yeah, homework at boarding school. And we
just to rub it in.
We had lessons on a Saturday morning as well.
Yeah.
So I think,
And do you wish you hadn't had that?
No, because it taught me discipline, it taught me to learn for myself. And actually, rather than just get rid of all the Victorian stuff, maybe we should bring some of it back, because it's about discipline, it's about education. So, no, I think we should keep it.
Agree. I think some of it is about, and you're right, Asif, in terms of children's memory, because the big argument about the long school holidays isn't it, that they come back after 6 weeks and they've forgotten everything they learned in the summer term. So I think that some of it's about reinforcement therapy, some of it is about learning to work without supervision. And I think you're right, we live in a 24-hour culture now, don't we? So in some respects, I guess it's about kids learning for themselves how to manage their timetable. I agree with you about childhood, and we want them to have fun as well. But, the reality is, the world we live in, you need to be educated to progress and to do things.
And of course, I would say we need to, when it's exam time, you need to put the revision hours in, you need to get your coursework done. But it seems to start earlier and earlier, the coursework, the deadlines, the stress. are we subjecting children to too much of that, really?
In the real world, though, it is stressful. When you finish school, it's going to be stressful. So if it's too soft when you're at school, you're not going to be prepared for the real world.
Are these first world problems, do you think?
Possibly. You've reminded me, though, at school we had a homework diary, and we had to have it signed by our parents. And I was cunning. Not once did I ask my parents to sign my homework book. I did it myself.
My parents got bored.
I could never ask. I could never ask them to, because then they would see that the one I'd been doing was a forgery. So I just every single week I had to do it. I did it myself.
My parents got bored of doing it every week, so they just taught me how to do their signatures. So it's probably not what my old teachers want to hear.
There are ways around it,
isn't it?
Yeah. Now let's move on and just put another question to you. Do you think we should toughen up the rules on truancy in Nottingham schools? At the moment, there are fines given out to parents whose children miss 7.5 days of school in a 6-week period. Now, the City Council is saying that is working. Truancy rates have begun to come down a little. Attendance rates are going up. So, can we please give fines if there are 6 days of absenteeism in every 6-week period? So tightening up, applying those fines of 60 quid earlier. And 200 fines have been given, in fact, so far this year. Is it fair to punish the parents for the child's truancy?
I think children are a reflection of their parents. They're a reflection of the environment in which they grow, which the parents allow them access to. So parents have full responsibility on that issue. And it is fair because unknowingly they are, or knowingly, they're doing harm to the child's future. The child is not getting into school on time, not understanding the work, they're not doing their homework, and they're not achieving their grades, and they're going to really not succeed when their peers are going to be excelling. And so it's a lifelong, and it really has an onward effect onto their children, next generation.
So whose job is it to engage a child in its own education? Is it the parents or is it the school?
It's a school.
Both.
It's a combination.
Both. Yeah.
You think it's a school, Ferg?
I think it's a school. My dad, I come from a family of teachers. My dad taught over in Aspley for 13 years. He taught in the Edwards Lane estate for 3 years. He dealt with kids who were having a rough time at home a lot of the time and just didn't want to be in school because it just felt an extension of somewhere else they didn't want to be. The way he engaged them, though, he tried to make it interesting and exciting and fun for them, which you can do in a science classroom, because his take on it was, if these kids are at home and not really enjoying it, they should have somewhere they can come and feel valued, feel like someone's paying attention to them, feel that someone's trying to engage them. I do see a role for a parent in it, but if the parent isn't engaging, then the teacher has to be able to do that.
Tough for a teacher that's got 32 kids in the class if half of them aren't that bothered. What can that one person do?
My dad, I saw this once. I was off and that was the only place I could be. He used to teach year 8 physics about how sound travels, which is vibrations through the air with a cricket bat. He used to go bashing cupboards and bashing tables saying why they make a sound. And then kids would be frantic looking through the textbooks in case the mad teacher went and clobbered them round the head with a cricket bat.
Which should be put in prison for today. Yeah.
Inspirational teachers, isn't it? But I agree again with Simon. It's a balance. The parents have got a responsibility to teach the child that basic understanding of what's right and what's wrong. There's lots of peer pressure on kids these days, but if you've been given those basic sort of rules in the beginning, then you're more likely to be able to withstand the peer pressure. But the teachers have a responsibility to make the coursework interesting and inspiring. A good teacher, an inspiring teacher, can make or break your school years. Yeah. A bad one can wreck it.
You know, I do accept that with the younger children, particularly, I'm sure at the Career Institute, it's the parents' responsibility to get the kids ready, deliver them to school on time, and that.
With uniform, with the breakfast, on time,
exactly.
With all their kit, with their homework done.
But once they move up into secondary education, how can you make a 15-year-old?
Yeah.
You can deliver them at the school gates, but you can't march them in and sit them in the lesson case.
But they should be in an environment where there's aspiration, they're excited to be there, they're learning stuff. And you've got to ask the right question. Why aren't they going to school in the first place? You know, younger students, yes, you get them there. It's the parents' responsibility to get them there. But then it's the teacher's responsibility to inspire and keep them there and keep them coming back.
So do we need to pay our teachers more? Because that sounds like a very talented individual that can do that. A room full. Let's say they are 15-year-olds, you know, the size of adults. That's a busy, busy classroom. If you've got people that aren't bothered, you know, I give talks. I know how hard it is if people aren't really listening to you. You can tell when you've lost a room Obviously, it happens rarely. But, to inspire them, that is a talented person.
There's also the issue of the fact that these kids are out and about and on the street. I mean, when I walk through town, during the school day, actually I think it through the working day as well, that why are these people all around? Why aren't these kids in school? Who's allowing them to be out on the street? And so should the society generally be doing more to, not to police it, but to be judging and saying, right, okay, why aren't these kids in school? Well, we don't need a child catcher, but we need some kind of mechanism for
and
sort
I
of...
suppose the fact that attendance figures have gone up slightly suggests that this approach is working, but who is it penalising? Is it penalising the child at the end of the day when their parents are paying out this money for their misbehaviour?
Is the parents can explain to the child, this money was there for your toy, for this gadget. Now I can't buy it for you, it has to go for your fine. And so if it's used in a logical way that makes sense to a child, it can work.
And just finally on this, just in defence of teachers really, and to try to understand, we expect a lot from them, I think. Saying, it's up to them to inspire a whole class. Yeah. Just finally, it takes a skill, doesn't it, Asif?
It's absolutely enormous skill, and our teachers are fantastic all over the country. But as you mentioned about pay and so forth, the exceptional teachers need to be put on a pay scale that reflects their performance. And if they can perform really well, yes, and they can.
But then how do you measure performance?
Well, there are many tools there that can be done.
Well, we're going to pause for a moment, and after the break, big topic, should Britain be fighting IS in Iraq?
Before I even hit the water, I can feel it. This incredible rush of power running right through me. It makes the ocean. It makes the man dive it off cool water.
Hello, welcome back to this week's Channel 8 debate with me, Francis Finn, and our 4 Nottinghamshire panellists, Sue, Simon, Asif and Ferg. Next, I'm wondering whether you think British troops should be fighting IS in Iraq. I'm asking because this week David Cameron has committed more troops to Iraq, but not to fight, to train Iraqi forces. Now, other nations like the United States are fighting. They are taking part in airstrikes, and it's been costed up that the Americans are actually spending £5.7 million a day to try to hold back IS. Now, you can't argue with the power, I suppose, the influence that IS has. It seems to be taking more swathes of the Middle East. The city of Mosul, we know, has gone to IS, and people are fearing for their lives. It's a really difficult situation. Asif, is the answer not for us to help and to fight?
We can't actually pick this situation and talk about it from now. We have to go back. We should not have gone into this fight in the first place. Absolutely. These factions that have come about, and IS and Al-Qaeda and so forth, they are a result of our interference in other people's lands, in their affairs. And now, once the fire's burning, for us to back out, is going to be absolutely dire, and it will eventually overspill into our.
So what you're saying is, we caused it, we were part of the cause of it. Now we need to be part of the solution. Now
it's not only training other people and letting those people die, because that's really what it is. It's a proxy. Look, you go and fight. We'll just train you from back here, so we don't want our people dying. If they got involved in the first place, go into it full. And just these bombs being dropped from the sky by the Americans isn't doing any help, really.
That's interesting because Musharraf Hussain was talking about this on the Channel 8 debate a long time ago now, a few months ago. But his view was, because we were part of the cause, we now have to clear out and let the home nations sort it out themselves, because we would be seen to be interfering in a problem that is, nothing to do with us now.
But it's a worldwide problem.
You see, we started the problem, and now once we've lit the fuse, now we back out. Do you understand? That's the situation at the minute.
Yes.
So whilst the fuse is still lit, we've got to try and put it out. But the thing is, we're still making mistakes. The way we're trying to assist, we're using our logic here in the safety of our homes, the way we think now, that it applies to them. It doesn't. Their logistics are different, their history is different, and everything in their country, the thought process is different.
Yeah.
So we've got to get those people involved and let them solve the problem.
But are you saying we need to send troops to fight alongside Iraqi forces?
We need to ask the people there what they want us to do.
And I think they are saying, come and help, aren't they? They're certainly welcoming the American support through airstrikes. The Americans are there, having been invited.
Yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant on this. I was incredibly anti the intervention in Iraq in 2003, and what's worried me about that is something I said at the time, was it's going to cause more problems at home. Then, of course, you've seen the attacks in London, the attacks in Glasgow, the further attempts in London. My fear is, I agree with you, I think there should be some intervention, not just sort of training people from afar and saying, you go and die for the cause in your land. I fear that it's going to cause more radicalisation at home. We're already seeing more people flying out to Syria and into Turkey to try and get involved. I think if you start sending boots on the ground, it's ripe for propaganda.
And when you talk to these people that have come back, having gone over to help fight against IS, they've always said, one of the reasons they've gone is they can't sit back and watch all of this happen. So is that effectively what we are guilty of doing now? We are letting IS take control.
I think historically we've been poking the hornet's nest in the Middle East for nearly 1,000 years, haven't we now? And history seems to have taught us nothing. That actually this is something that is probably never going to go away, because there's some massive ideological differences. I think part of the problem with kids upsticking and going to Syria is that they don't understand the context and the volume of the issue. So some of it's about educating people back here so that they understand what they're taking on, because they're going out there with this ideological, fanciful idea that they're going to help to make a difference, and actually they're putting themselves in danger. As you say, some of it is about what reflects back here.
It's a messy thing, isn't it?
It is very messy, and it's been going on for a really long time.
You've got to nip it in the bud there now, haven't you? And whatever the reason that this whole thing started, and yes, if hindsight's a wonderful thing, but we are where we are. This is an international problem. This is international terrorism, and it requires the world to come together to finish, if you like, what they started.
You say nip it in the bud. I think the days of it being a bud were long time.
Well, yeah.
But
if we don't deal with it now, it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Now, just to give you a sense of the interference, Shiite and Sunnis have been living together 1,400 years, live side by side. There's been no issue. The Jews and Muslims have been living together for that long as well. There's been no problem. The only problem started with the Jewish community is when Arab land was given as the state of Israel to them. And that's where that issue started. Now in Iraq, because there was a Sunni government that's been toppled over and a Shiite government's brought in, that's now brought the Shiite-Sunni situation into focus. And yet, in reality, these people and these communities live together for hundreds of years without any real issue. And it's only interference that's actually stoked all of this. And
I do see what you're saying, although I think the Israeli community would not necessarily concede that they were happily living side by side. They wanted a nation state, they wanted land.
True.
So, but anyway, let's leave that. That's a separate issue. Let's talk about IS and Iraq.
There's an interesting thing here. I mean, I studied this sort of stuff in my master's degree. I did it in international security and counter-terrorism studies, which is very, very niche. But whereas before with something like Al-Qaeda, you had a figurehead at the top of it, you had an Osama bin Laden at the very top that you could, go and hang your hat on. With IS, or as Dr. Musharraf is calling it Daesh, which is basically calling them what they are, which is infidels and unbelievers, by trying to delegitimise them. You don't have that one figurehead that everyone flocks to. It's just a symbol. It's that black flag, which I think is really interesting to try and combat. How do you start arguing against a concept? You can show that bin Laden was evil. You can show that these hate preachers are wrong and are misinterpreting Islam for their own gains. But how do you go against a concept? It's like saying, how do you rise up against the West as a concept? It's very, very difficult to try and understand it.
Well, it's the Hydra's head as well, isn't it? Because as fast as you chop one off, another one grows, and you just...
Yeah, interesting. Well, we are agreed on one thing, and that is this is a very difficult, complex issue that, certainly the five of us can't solve. But
two nations living alongside for a really long time, and then something upsets them. England and Scotland.
yeah.
Sorry, different issue.
I just want to change the subject to something not quite as consequential as what's going on in the Middle East. And that is, do you think that piercing babies and toddlers' ears should be banned. The reason I'm asking, there's a petition doing the rounds at the moment. 28,000 signatures is on the petition, and it's led to a Labour MP, Mark Tammin, saying he's going to raise this in Parliament. And his justification for having a ban is that a baby and a toddler can't consent to having their flesh pierced by their parents. So would you back a ban on piercing toddlers' ears? Simon, you're nodding.
Yeah, well, I've got two young boys, and the thought of piercing their ears, well, it's never really crossed my mind, so it's not really an issue to me. But in actual fact, you're right. They don't have a choice, do they? And yeah, I would support a ban. I absolutely would. They can make the decision when they're old enough to make the decision.
Mr. Tammy says if we allow parents to do other things to their children's faces, like tattooing, that would be appalling. But although piercings can heal, they can still cause distorting effects to the ear, in the skin and muscle.
It's the tattoo thing is absolute nonsense. I've got tattoos. I chose to get them when I was in my 20s. I mean, I got that when I was 21. You know, it's the sort of thing I did choose to do. But comparing piercing ears to tattooing are two completely different things. That'll heal up. If I take that out and leave it for a couple of weeks, that will heal up.
If you had that at 3.
If I had that at 3, I'd look like a fool.
But you know, let's think about
the issue.
Well, no, yeah, but this is perhaps. Do you think this is what's underlying these people? It's that kind of middle class snobbery again. We talked about this last week. You know,
Am I allowed to use the C word? Chavs. So people are saying that only chavs have their kids' ears pierced. Is that what we're saying?
I think there is certainly a more cultural propensity towards that in some groups than others.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I don't like about it is that piercings, you know, girls like them when they become teenagers because they think they improve their attractiveness.
And you badger your mum, don't you? Mum, can I go and have
Yeah.
my
So
ears pierced?
is it part of sexualising a child when you're trying to make them attractive and look grown up and have earrings? Why would you put earrings into a baby or a toddler?
And when they go to school, they're messing around in the playground. They've got these dangling earrings. One gets ripped out. It's potentially a dangerous thing.
We don't have dangly earrings in schools, studs for many decades now. And really, the argument that children can't give consent, they can't give consent for other things as well, about what kind of milk they want to drink, whether it's breast milk or formula milk, whether they have a particular juice or not.
That's different to piercing ears.
Well, no, because no.
It's an interesting
It's
point.
why, because it's a cultural issue as well. And culturally, many communities want their children, and it's regarded as a good thing to have it. And if it's done earlier when the child can't remember it, it's far better than being an adult and then piercing it, which is quite painful. But this is a thin wedge I can see leading towards possibly banning male circumcision in the future as well.
I was going to ask whether
going.
it was appropriate to bring that up because because as you say, for some cultures it is part of the culture. I struggle to see where the origin of something like that comes from, but it is a cultural thing, and so therefore, you know, do we have to respect that? I personally think that it's sad for little ones to be punctured in that way, but that's a personal opinion, and you know, if there is a cultural
It's cultural. It's
thing
different,
behind
isn't
it, then it is
But if it's not
different, yeah.
cultural, then you know.
But it's becoming cultural in some families. It's part of their culture.
rite of passage. Have your
Travellers
ears
as
pierced
well.
at
You know, it's
3.
more common in travelling communities,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
In that sense, I don't see a single traveller MP who would be able to stand there and say, actually, here's the context. So my perspective on that would be, I think, trying to say there's a ban, you do need to understand those cultural sensitivities. It might be that it is, like you say, a rite of passage for traveller communities and other communities, but you have to consult with them first before you ban something which might affect the way that they live their lives.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not this is going to get through Parliament, but it's interesting that 28,000 people have put their names on the petition.
Would you have your little girl's ears pierced?
I
at their
wouldn't.
age?
No, I wouldn't. After the break, I want your thoughts on how we tackle our drunken culture in the UK. Hello, welcome back to this week's Channel 8 debate with me, Francis Finn. A reminder that if you'd like to chip in on anything you're listening to, you agree, you disagree, or you've got a question for next week's panel, then do it via Twitter. Just use the hashtag C8debate. Our panellists this week are Sue Dewey, Simon Gray, Asif Ali and Ferg Slade. Next, another big topic really, and is it time to toughen up on alcohol abuse in Britain? Now, there have been some sad stories linked to the abuse of alcohol in the last week or so. Of course, Charles Kennedy's death, the family has volunteered the information that his death was caused by a hemorrhage directly related to his alcoholism. Alistair Campbell was a friend of his, former Labour spin doctor, and he admits that he's got an issue with alcohol. And he says we are sleepwalking our way as a nation into a future epidemic of alcoholism, because it's no longer a minority of people that see a night out as being time to get drunk. That is the objective when you go out and have a few drinks. You've got to get drunk. Student, university culture, there are those initiation ceremonies you've got to get through to be accepted as part of the in crowd. You're seen as a weirdo if you don't get completely smashed out of your brains when you go out for a night out. Now, is Alistair Campbell right in that we need to wake up to that if we're going to prevent more tragic cases in future?
I think there's a difference between going out and getting drunk on a night and alcoholism. Alcoholism is where you wake up and the first thing you think you want is a drink. Paul Gascoigne's been talking very frankly about it this week.
But you're not born like that, are you?
Well, I don't know. That's still not conclusive. But I think, if there is a bit more drinking around, for instance, I will see people occasionally going into the shop around the corner from me, and this will be 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing they'll be buying is a can of special brew. They're not the kind of people I see at a local pub. There's a distinct difference
We have
here.
got this culture, though. We have it in the UK of people going out to get drunk. And you were talking about university. I've had my fair share of nights out. I can promise you that. And I think we do need to address it. Look at what we've done with smoking. We've educated people on the packets. This is what will happen if you smoke. We haven't really done that, I don't think, to as great effect with alcohol, but maybe we should.
So it'll make it more of a taboo. A bit like with speeding in
It's
cars
more
and
fashionable,
using
isn't it? All the
mobiles.
brands you have around the alcohol, the different beers, the different ciders, whatever it is, the different wines. We've taken that away from the cigarette market, and it started to work. We haven't really done that in the alcohol market.
I think we haven't shown what the really bad effects are. I mean, we have a society now, don't we, where, again, like you, Simon, I hold my hand up, I've had a few party nights in my time, probably still do. People who know me know that I like a glass of wine socially. But for my memory of growing up drinking was that we had a healthy respect for it because we were introduced to it by parents at a sensible age, like you were saying. Also, I don't recall going out and with the intention of getting completely blotto. A, we couldn't afford it, and B, it's the spirits that they're drinking now. And what I was going to say was the fact that we're now seeing women, not just men in their 30s and 40s, but young women with cirrhosis of the liver. That's an atrocious statistic because it was always an old man's disease.
But as Ferg says, just because some people can't hold their drink and find it addictive and compulsive, doesn't mean that it is dangerous to the extent that we should all be banning drunkenness.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Or does it? Because that's your culture. Islam is very strong about alcohol.
Yes, I've had people absolutely amazed when they ask me that, what, are you really sure, honest, you haven't had a single drop of alcohol all your life? So I haven't. I said, well, you know what, really, you're not missing anything. And truly, I've had so many people say that. And there was one question session going in a college, and they asked the speaker, they said, we understand that fine, there's all these drunken issues of driving and so forth and responsibility, but why doesn't Islam allow a person to take a drink when they're lying in bed, they've locked the door, the children are asleep, the fire's off, whatever, all the responsibilities done, have a glass and go to sleep? And the answer the speaker gave was, okay, let's imagine that he does. At 11 o'clock, he has a drink, knocks himself out. 12 o'clock, his house catches fire. Neighbours are out, banging on the doors and say, look, get up, but he isn't. He goes, his children go. So the sense of responsibility within Islam doesn't go away. So you're always responsible for your actions and the actions of those around you, or even the inactions then in that scenario. And so for that reason, anything that intoxicates is absolutely forbidden. And you look within the Muslim world, in terms of drink, what do those people do when they're not drinking? They're sitting with their family. They're engaging. They love the family. And that's where the family bond and unity and community comes from. And we see that's been totally decimated in the Western culture where drinking is allowed.
Isn't it also fair to say that in moderation, we can, as grown-ups, taking responsibility for ourselves, we can police ourselves. That's part of maturing,
Why hasn't
isn't it?
it
That's
happened?
part of wisdom.
Why hasn't it happened?
Well, for most people, it does. It's just that there will always be people that find it more difficult. Ferg, you wanted to come in earlier.
Yeah, I just think something that you mentioned about it being a distinctly British thing. It's not. I lived in Denmark for a little while. And I even made a trip over to Sweden, where I'm not even kidding you. You walk out of the bag, having got a couple of cans of cider for £4 a can. There's a big black X on it. It says alcohol, like you're warning everyone that you've got alcohol, you might be dangerous. And there is a distinct difference. In Sweden, it's kind of frowned upon to drink. And I will say this quite honestly, I found Sweden very, very dull. It's very pretty, very cultural. It's lovely, but there isn't a great deal going on. But in Denmark, after work, you will go for a couple of drinks and then you'll go home to your family. It's just what you do to unwind at the end of the day.
Well, the pubs in this country have been central to our communities, haven't they, for hundreds of years. Less so
Alcohol's
now.
more
I know,
affordable here as well, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yes. I just want to rewind though to what Asif was saying, and I said, yeah, but just because, some people can't handle it. The reason I'm raising this question today is that people like Alistair Campbell are saying, hang on, we've had that argument in place for a while, and now our culture, it seems to be running away from us a bit. It's becoming too much of an issue now. It's becoming all-pervading, this expectation that you don't just have a drink, you get smashed. And that's going to have consequences. And almost, what Asif is saying, are we seeing that now as, it's got to be all or nothing, because it's becoming too much all in our culture. Does Alistair Campbell have a point?
You're right again, yeah. And some of it is about, it's the younger generation that do it, and then you kind of grow out of it a bit, don't you? Some of it is about, you're right, Ferg, some people have an addictive personality, and I think there needs to be some probably more research into whether that's a real thing, and there is a chip somewhere or a gene or something that makes you more susceptible to addiction. But I think you don't see so many more mature people behaving in that way. It does sort of dwindle out. It does seem to be like a youth culture thing. And obviously I work in a university, so we've got lots of bars. And
it's youth culture now, but these youths are going to grow up, aren't they? Are they going to continue
but they all
to
go
be
on
like
and
that,
get jobs in the city and grow up. Some of them will go and be champagne Charlies maybe.
A lot. Too much. But now I don't. I rationalise it, I'll have one glass of wine, a few nights a week, that's it.
How much damage have you already caused to your body?
I don't know. Maybe I need to go and see
The
somebody.
liver can repair itself. That's a comforting thing for you.
I think the thing is, I used to drink a lot more when I was at university. I don't as much now. Part of it is, okay, I don't want to drink as much. I don't feel the need. I've got to go home, cook, pay bills, things like that. The other part is hangovers get worse as you get older.
This is true as well.
Absolutely.
Yes,
and when you have children.
Let me just move this on a little bit and talk about trains and drink, because this week in the news, the Nottingham to Skegness line has once again been sullied, if you like, by drunken behaviour. There was a group of lads, got very drunk, and in one carriage in particular, someone exposed himself, and there were families present with kids. I mean, that's horrid. There's nowhere to hide, is there, when you're faced with that in a train? And therefore, should the rail network follow the lines of the London Underground and perhaps ban booze on trains? Is that a place to start, Asif?
It needs to start with education, and it needs to start with exactly the same format we'd adopted for cigarettes, and have possibly a 20-year target, that within that time frame, over one generation, we need to educate them to be far, far more responsible. And eventually it does need to go that direction, and banning drink, just like cigarettes, within carriages.
So you say yes, do that. I think the Nottingham to Worksop line is one of the few lines where it's banned, based on repeated offenders.
You talk about aeroplanes as well. It's been a common problem on airlines, hasn't it? And I tend to agree that if in that kind of enclosed environment, where there are people that maybe don't drink, there are people that can't control themselves when they drink, then absolutely, maybe it's time to think about it.
What
about limiting the access to it, though? I mean, it's a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because it's a minority of people that behave in that way. So you're affecting everybody by treating it. It's like the Dangerous Dogs Act and the Gun Act and all the rest of it. Something happens and we immediately have this response, right, let's ban it. And actually, it's about part of it's about education, some of it's about accessibility. So they could limit. I mean, on the airplane, you can't get limitless booze because they just come around and deliver you so much. And if you're going to start banning it, what are you going to do then? Breathalyse people before they get on the train, because they could already be hammered before they get on the train.
It's about education. It's also about being able to properly prosecute people who do things like that. Yeah. If I go and have a few beers on a train, I don't suddenly think, I'll go and expose myself to a family, because that's not how normal people think.
No, exactly.
Because this one guy's been an idiot, and because there are certain idiots.
Linked, aren't we? That alcohol led to that. He may have just
could have been egged on by his mates.
Yeah, because alcohol lowers your inhibitions, all right, you might have had that in your psyche somewhere anyway to start with. That doesn't mean everyone does. And you think of the number of train journeys, the number of flights that go to not just, just this country, but around the world. It is a minority.
How much pain can we save in the country if alcohol wasn't there? How many marriages, how many drivers crashing?
That's a good question, but in my life, how much pain would be caused by not being able to have the old glass of wine to relieve stress?
If you didn't know that,
It's a release mechanism.
there are other mechanisms there
You
already.
can't unknow it though,
and
can
believe
you?
me, family and investing your time and loving them, is the best place.
Yeah, but I have to say, just in defence of people who drink modestly and sensibly, we're completely able to love our families, and completely able to live highly functioning, responsible lives and make big contributions to our communities and enjoy alcohol. But it's those that can't do it sensibly and moderately that have problems, isn't it? And what you're saying is, for the sake of those, everyone needs to take a hit.
Well, we've done that in other things, so I can't see why we can't do it here. America tried banning it in 1960s. They failed, but because it wasn't done in the appropriate way.
All right.
And so
Tried it
Interesting.
before with
All right.
prohibition, and all it did was drove it underground.
After the break, we'll have more discussion on the Channel 8 debate. Don't go away. Welcome back to the final part of this week's Channel 8 debate with me, Francis Finn, and our lovely panellists, Sue, Simon, Asif and Ferg. Now, I want to talk to you about RE. I don't know whether you did it at school, whether you enjoyed it. Do you think that it should be compulsory in Nottinghamshire schools? I'm asking because faith groups are saying that because it's no longer compulsory, it's declining in the number of students that are choosing to learn it. It's suggesting, therefore, that RE should be taught alongside the other core subjects in the curriculum. Now, I see if you're the obvious one to start with here, because you teach in a Muslim school, 5 to 11-year-olds.
not only do I teach, I studied RE and I trained as an RE teacher.
There you go. Perfect for you. Should it be compulsory?
It was compulsory for more than 100 years. Ever since education became compulsory in the land. And I feel it should continue to do so because now we're becoming more diverse. And now is the time when we need to understand each other's sensitivities and each other's religions and backgrounds and cultures. And actually taking away that understanding at a point when we're now the mixing pot of all cultures and races is actually very devastating.
I agree with a caveat, which is, I think I mentioned earlier, I went to Catholic school, I went in as a Christian, I came out agnostic. Now, that is because the entire time I was there, I was only ever taught the New Testament. I was only ever taught about Catholicism. I was only ever taught about Christianity. I never learned anything about Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism, none of it. It was only at university I learned any of that. That is an enormous downfall. And yes. I think I didn't get to know about university. It may have been that while I moved away from Christianity, I moved into another religion instead, but I wasn't afforded the opportunity.
You think that having learned about other faiths may have helped you retain, if you'd wanted to, your
Christianity? It may have retained some faith. Well, maybe
really?
Not Christianity, maybe some other faith. Mm-hmm. I might have looked and gone, actually, Hinduism makes sense to me. It might have been that anything could have suddenly gone, actually, no, I resonate more with that, like you do with politics sometimes. You go, actually, I don't like that party, that makes more sense to me.
Is there also a danger, though, with religion? I mean, my dad, for instance, he's an atheist now, but he went to a Catholic school. Sorry about Catholic schools, I'm not picking on them. But in those days, he would use the term, it was rammed down my throat. You know, you're made to go to Mass, you're made to do this. And I don't know how it is in Islam, Asif, but obviously there is an expectation that everybody goes to prayers, goes to mosque and so on. It's interesting how that doesn't seem to turn people off.
It doesn't, because the
way everybody does it.
The way it's done is it actually binds the community together. By going to the mosque, you're meeting friends, you're meeting people, you find out somebody's unwell, somebody new is moving into the area, and then you walk home with somebody. And so it's a very good time to socialise with people and so forth. And then again, there's nothing heavy. It's all light. It's actually unburdening your day. You go there, you wash yourself, and then you stand totally clear your mind in front of your Lord, and you prostrate to your Lord. And it's actually like yoga for other people, and actually de-stresses you.
So back to RE in schools.
Well, I did RE. It was my
Yeah.
1O level. I quite enjoyed it, actually.
Your 1O level.
Yeah, I did GCSE. No, I got more than 1O.
I was going to say, that was an
GCSEs.
expensive
I was
education
the
for 1O level.
I was the first GCSE intake.
So was I.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Yeah, same age.
For me, it's not about what you believe, what you end up believing, whether you're religious or whether you become religious, but it's about acceptance and understanding.
Yes.
Because we live in a multicultural society, and if we understand other people...
And how interesting this week we're talking about it when that girl from Derby is being detained by police in Malaysia, having been part of a big group that got their tops off on a sacred
absolutely.
mountain.
About somebody else's
Perhaps
culture.
they did understand, or they were told not to do it, but they just didn't care. And that's sad, isn't it? Perhaps if they'd learned more about it from a more neutral, educational perspective at school, they would have cared more. I don't know. I don't know.
I think
went
it's
to
a
a-
respect thing more than a education thing. They were told not to do it, so they did it. That's, you know, in a sense, I'm not saying deserve to be in trouble, but you can see why they're in trouble. I think linking it to an earthquake's daft, but
Yeah, well, that's again, that's an
I don't
educational
think that's
thing,
why
or
she's
cultural thing.
in police
in that.
custody, though. It's anyway, go on.
Well, I went to a Church of England school, and RE, as you say, RE was a core subject, and you had to take it up to O level. Dating myself as well, so I learned. I found it an interesting subject, and I actually chose to take it at A level. I didn't do particularly well in my A levels, but I did do it as a subject. But I do wish that we had learned more about some of the other faiths and some of the other cultures, because I'm drawn more to things like Buddhism now that I understand more about them over the years. And I don't consider myself particular. I don't go to church very often. My mother goes every Sunday. She finds it very comforting, and she gets all of the things that you were describing, I see, from the sociability, the spiritualism, and all the rest of it. So I think we ought to be encouraging schools to still teach those kinds of values. I'm interested in what you said, though, Ferg, about you came out as an agnostic and not an atheist. It was an interesting choice of word from your experience at school. But and I have friends who went to Catholic schools who described the same. I think there was that.
It's
there was
very,
that,
I know.
especially if you went to a Jesuit
Although
school.
there were some
that was
marvellous Catholic schools, and I mean that generally, like Trinity School in Aspley, I'm always singing the praises of that school. So, you know, I don't mean to generalise, but...
No, but there is that sort of perception, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Christ the King was fantastic. It taught me the idea of faith and respect. Just because I don't necessarily have faith doesn't mean I don't respect it.
It's some of those rules of society that came from our religion, wasn't it? Some of the things, the codes that we live by have come through
It's a big
religion.
topic, this one. I'm going to draw a line here because I want to end on something I'm so looking forward to hearing your thoughts on. Should more men take their wives' surnames when they get married? I am asking you because it's in the news this week. There's been a really big reaction to an American actress called Zoe Saldana. No, I hadn't heard of her either. She got married and her husband took her surname, and lots of people reacting on social media. She says to them, why is it so surprising, shocking, eventful that a man would take his wife's surname? Men, you will not cease to exist by taking your partner's surname. On the contrary, you will be remembered as a man who stood by change.
Is it because she's more famous than him that he's taken her surname?
Well, I presume so. But, you know,
Sorry, being cynical.
being serious about this, though, is this the last frontier of patriarchy in our Western culture that we need to conquer, ladies? We want equal pay, equal rights, but somehow as soon as we get married, that's it. Our former identity, our family's name doesn't matter anymore. It's all about the blokes.
I knew you were going to ask me this, and my wife will be watching, so I'm being slightly nervous
Careful
about
how you
this
answer,
question.
Simon.
So, for me, it's very easy to get into the whole equality debate with this, but for me, it's not about equality. It's about tradition. So my wife took my name. I think she's pretty happy with it. But if she'd have asked me to take her name, I'd perhaps have been less happy on the traditional basis, not the equality basis.
Well, because it's quite rare still, isn't it? It is. I wonder whether that's ever going to change.
I think the American model of keeping your surname and bolting your husband's name onto it probably is a...
it American?
Well, they do quite
We've
a
had
lot of
Pinkerton
American
Smythes
women will
for a long
have...
time, haven't
Quite
we?
a lot of American women will keep their surname and have their husband's name as well, won't they? And then if they get married 3 or 4 more times, they end up with a really long surname. They don't hyphenate them like we do.
There's an interesting model on the continent. You see it in Spain and you see it in Scandinavia as well, where there's 2 surnames.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember particularly a footballer, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It wasn't Gunnar was his middle name. Yeah. It was his father's surname. Solskjaer was his mother's surname. Yeah. And that's how the names work in Scandinavia.
The thing is, though, I mean, is it just me? But let's say you get together. What's your wife's maiden name?
Williams.
So there's a Gray Williams.
Yeah.
Then
Or Williams Gray.
And then your children grow up being Williams Gray and now marry someone else who's done a similar
It'll
thing.
never end.
You've got a quadruple barrel surname.
Well, that's why
and
I
then
like-
they marry again and you've got an octuple barrel surname.
That's
It
why I
can't
like
work.
the Scandinavian model where you take each of your parents' surnames and
Yeah,
then
but then
the
you're
same-
doubling
Keep them
it up.
forever, do you?
No,
you're doubling
you
it up.
can't. I think you still revert. You can choose to revert to your father's surname or your mother's surname when you marry and give your kids those names.
So you choose
there is
one
a
of them when
choice.
you go on.
Yeah.
Well, in this
Right.
country, it's not compulsory for a lady to take her husband's name. She has a choice.
That's right.
Okay, she has a choice. So that's clear there. And if now, after thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years, we change the system when we've got our family trees all sorted out, how do you find out your parental line? How do you find out whose children you are?
I know, it's a pain in the neck for genealogists, but is that a reason to say we still live in a patriarchy, therefore the man's name is the one that's...
I was going to keep my maiden name because my maiden name's Bentley and I quite like that. And I'm one of 3 daughters, and my dad was an only son, so the name effectively goes. One of my sisters has put Bentley in all her boys as a middle name. But I did want to take Trevor's name as I wanted to be Mrs. Dewey, but having the complication of being Sue Bentley at work and Sue Dewey at home, and then trying to remember which signature you were
Yeah, I know.
signing,
Well,
and
I'm in that
checkbooks
position
and
because I
credit
kept
cards.
Finn
and-
is my maiden name,
Yeah.
but that's because I was already known as a broadcaster
Exactly,
as
yeah.
Francis Finn.
So it's
I
your
get the best of
professional
both
name,
worlds, but a
yeah.
lot of women have to say goodbye to
A
their...
lot of professional women in the media do keep their name, don't they?
Ferg.
My girlfriend and I, we hate our own surnames. I'm Ferg Slade, she's Martine Bittner. You know, we don't really like the idea
just
of either.
swap?
Well, we just
Just get a new one.
we hate each other's as well. So we just come to the solution. We'll not. You know, I'm basically. I'm not interested in the marriage things. We'll have to have the debate. So
You're
we'll be
not
okay.
going to marry your lovely lady?
I'm not going to marry anyone. It's
That's
not just
another
her.
tradition.
Not
No, don't let's
TV.
go there.
What's we going to do with him, Asif?
Well, if systems have worked, if systems have worked for thousands of years, why are we changing them for the sake of changing
if it
them?
ain't broke,
You know,
don't
if
fix
it's not
it, I
broke,
agree.
don't fix it. Keep it
Well,
going.
they
It's
could have
working.
said that about slavery.
Oh,
Well, look.
now you're just being
I'm not
controversial.
I'm not proposing a revolution here. And the same with Zoe Saldana in America. She's decided that she wants her husband to take her name, and he's decided he's okay with that.
Yeah.
I've decided I don't want to get married. I'm not interested in that. So that I'm not sort of saying no, this is the way forward.
We
I
live
think
in a
that'd be wrong.
democracy, yeah,
I
it's
don't want to
choice,
impose.
isn't it?
You know,
Yeah.
they might use
You've
their
not
work for
decided
me.
not to get married because you don't know which name to use. You just...
Oh no, I mean, look, there's different surnames I could choose in my family. I've got Baird, Truscott and Venter I could take as a surname as well. I don't really want it. I don't want
It will
Ferg
get
as a
ever so
name.
confusing, won't it? It will get confusing.
Yeah.
So let's keep it with our husbands' names and fathers' names.
Says the man all smugly.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. And on that note, we're going to call it a day, call it an evening, and that's all we've got time for. You can continue the debate on Twitter, of course. Remember the hashtag C8Debate. And a big thank you to today's guests, to Sue Dewey, Simon Gray, Asif Ali and Ferg Slade. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.